What's up guys, ArchAngel Manga here, and today's series review is going to be Fooly Cooly, the anime and the manga. That's what's going to be actually different about this video. I'm not just going to be focusing on the anime, I'm also going to be focusing on the manga scene as I own them both, and doing a little bit of comparison between the two. Fooly Cooly, or as it kind of looks like FLCL. I actually thought it was called FLCL for quite some years, but yeah, it's actually pronounced Fooly Cooly. Now, Fooly Cooly is probably one of the most surreal animes I've ever watched. Alongside the manga, so it's very, very weird manga and anime. I first picked up the manga from a recommendation from a friend maybe about 3 years ago. Started reading it, got maybe about a third into it and just dropped it because I just could not understand what was going on at all. And it's only recently that I've gotten around to watching the anime. Now, trying to explain FLCL to someone who's relatively new to anime would be like trying to explain quantum mechanics to a 3-year-old. FLCL requires you to have prior knowledge to anime and just the fandom in general, as it's heavily reliant on pop culture references and references to anime as a whole. This anime I would describe this anime as an anti-anime, in the fact that it parodies itself and basically pokes fun at the fact that it is an actual anime, which I found very interesting about the series. Hands down, I would definitely say it's an absolute masterpiece. I definitely regard it as one of my favourite anime. Having seen the entire series. Now, when I say a series, it's not like a 26 episode series, it's a 6-episode OVA. Each episode being about 25 minutes long. So it's a relatively quick watch. You can basically breeze through it in just in one afternoon. I actually ended up rewatching it a few times. Because it's one of those things that you kind of do have to watch, maybe about 2 or 3 times, even more. It has high rewatchability. It's definitely got a lot of value in that fact. What is it about? I guess you could take that sort of, statement with a grain of salt, because it isn't really about anything. To sum it up, the series is full of metaphors and analogies. The overarching sort of message of the series is coming of age, as it centres around a 12-year-old boy called Naoto Nandabe, who lives in the fictional city of Mabase in Japan. Now, Naoto, even though he's 12 years old, he's wiser than his years, and he feels like he's surrounded by the idiocracy of adults. He thinks that all adults are just really stupid and immature, while he himself is mature. And he's stuck, in like a paradox like that. He isn't able to escape from people who he feels that they should be mature than he is. But yeah, he can do nothing about it. So he comes from a working class family. He lives with his dad, who's a widower, and his grandfather, and they all live in a bakery. Now, Naoto spends most of his days under the bridge, practicing his baseball swings and things like that, because his older brother lives in America and plays for a baseball team over there. And every time Naoto goes under the bridge, just kind of chill out, is always accompanied by Mamimi, who's like the sort of one of the secondary characters in the show. Or I guess because there's 3 primary characters, but I'll kind of get into that. You've got Naoto, who's the primary character, the main character, and then Mamimi, who's another main character. And every time they're under the bridge, Mamimi is always trying to make sexual advances towards him. Especially, it's kind of awkward due to the fact that she's 17, and she's kind of like the isn't she ex-girlfriend of Naoto's older brother, who lives in America. So Mamimi basically uses Naoto as a sexual substitute for his older brother, who is absent, much to Naoto's resentment and annoyance. And that's one of the things in this series, that it's heavily driven by sexual metaphors, and you kind of get to find that out the more you watch it. You might get to the end of all 6 episodes and not understand what's going on whatsoever. But when you rewatch it a few times, you kind of see hidden messages that it's trying to portray. So basically, you have Naoto, who lives his life plainly. You've got Mamimi, who makes sexual advances towards him, because his older brother, who is her ex-boyfriend, is absent. And then the final main character is Haruko. Now she literally comes out of nowhere. As Naota and Mamimi are walking home, they're walking over a bridge, and Haruko speeds out of nowhere on like a Vespa scooter with a vintage blue left-handed bass guitar in one hand, and basically whacks him over the head with it. Now this is where the story really kicks in, because from that an NO portal is created in Naota's forehead, which basically enables giant robots created by a company called Medical Machina, who reside within the city of Mabase, to basically travel through his head like a portal. It's like an interdimensionary gate. So, much to his confusion, I guess you could say that that whole event of Naota living a normal life, being pursued by his older brother's girlfriend, that event of Haruko just running him down on a scooter at 400 miles an hour and knocking him over the head with a bass guitar is kind of symbolic of her. It's like Naota's sexual feelings coming into fruition. It's like a sexual awakening, and I know that sounds completely strange, but given the situation, that it kind of fell under, you can kind of say it's symbolic of that, because Haruko ends up giving him like CPR, and then there's this like massive, like this crazy sort of slow motion, like rotating scene where Mamimi's like, oh my god, she's kissing him. And that's one of the things that Naota struggles to deal with, is his like sexual confusion, like throughout the series, and like you kind of see how that progresses from episode to episode. So there are these events that kind of seemingly random that hold like significant symbolic meaning, in terms of Naota's character and who he is. So anyway, Haruko hits him around the head with this basic star, resulting in an NO portal. We don't know what NO stands for, by the way. You never actually get to find out, but it's like a portal that basically enables, like I said, robots from a company called Medical Machina to travel through his head. But more often than not, the robots end up getting stuck like as they're coming out. So Naota just ends up with like sort of like a phallus-like appendage like on his head, which is very symbolic of like male erections, and he always tries to kind of like hide it with like bandages and heads, and he always feels embarrassed about it, and he tries to push it back in, and like they always like kind of like spread out in like various sexual or embarrassing situations, where he blushes and things like that. So these robots which kind of come out of his head signify kind of sexual suppression, but also wanting to sexually awaken. It's really, really strange. I know it's completely strange, but that's just what it is. So anyway, these robots end up sprouting out of his head. Two robots sprout out at the same time and end up fighting. One of these robots ends up being Cantido, or Canti, which is this robot which is named after God, and Mamimi ends up starting to worship him because he's resemblant of the god of a game that she plays called Firestarter, in which you have to kind of go around like burning parts of like a city in this game to like sort of like quell some kind of invasion, and that's where we learn about how Mamimi is a pyromaniac, and that she ended up burning down her old elementary school, and it was actually Naota's older brother who saved her from the fire, resulting in her believing that Naota's brother was in love with her. Now I know everything that I'm saying probably doesn't make any sense, but I highly recommend watching this series. And also one thing you should do is also do a bit of research. I found myself going onto a website called FLCL World, which basically, I will link it in the description. It's a really interesting website. It basically it theorizes different sort of metaphors and analogies that appear in the series, and kind of the people discuss like sort of hidden meanings within the series, and that's kind of where I've kind of gained a lot of my knowledge about the series from, things that I kind of didn't understand after watching it a few times. So anyway, yeah, Haruko opens this NO portal for Naota, ends up sprouting robots out of his head, and you know, kind of he's just completely confused. And then like shift forward like a few days, Haruko ends up working as like a living maid at his bakery with his father. Now this makes it even more awkward because his father's like a complete pervert and is always trying to have sex with Haruko, or like trying to snuggle up to her and things like that. She's always like dressed in like really sexually revealing, you know, outfits. And you know, she ends up living or sleeping in Naoto's room and always trying to like sleep in his bed and things like that. So Naoto is under constant sexual barrage from, you know, either Mamimi, Haruko, you know, one of his other female friends in his class, you know, and it's like sexually pressure, it's like peer pressure on him, you know, for the young boy that he is. He's like only 12 years old, but you know, he's going through puberty and he's kind of experiencing all this confusion anyway. So you know, these sort of girls that are surrounding him are kind of like symbolic, you know, of emotions that he would be experiencing at that age anyway. So yeah, that's basically one of the like biggest two of the biggest overarching messages of this series are coming of age, sexual maturity. You know, I guess you could say that guess you could say that in a nutshell. But there are also various like references to pop culture. In that Naoto's father is like a pop culture journalist, or I should say a retired pop culture journalist, and a lot of like the conversations allude to you know, sort of things that exist in real life. Like a lot of the weapons used in the series like are actual vintage guitars, like, you know, Haruko's bass guitar, or you know, later on in the series you see Naoto being able to sprout out like a flying V guitar and things like that, which kind of suggests, you know, that Naoto is probably well endowed, which is really strange to say considering that he's 12 years old, but that's something that is kind of pressed upon in the series, that all these girls are kind of like flinging themselves for him because he's actually really well endowed, and he's like just, you know, unaware of it. Like, he's actually really powerful, and obviously he's the main character. Like, he's not like, you know, pathetically weak. You know, he's actually strong. He can hold himself in a fight eventually. But yeah, this anime was produced by Gainax. It was directed by Kazuya Tsurumaki, who was the assistant director in Neon Genesis Evangelion. He's actually the protege of Hideaki Anno, obviously the main director of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And you can basically see, I mean, FLCL or Fooly Cooly is a, you know, it's not a really old anime, but for the time it was like revolutionary. You know, they were trying to sort of create like a different genre within itself, you know, like a parody genre, and that I think really shows that really well. And the influence that Fooly Cooly has had on anime, you know, in general, like if you compare Fooly Cooly to, you know, shows like, you know, shows that are airing now, like Space Dandy, or the recently aired Kill la Kill, you know, they're very, very, very similar. Yeah, I guess I should explain what Fooly Cooly even means, because that's a question that, you know, props up a lot in the series. And Fooly Cooly, or Fudi Kuri, is basically the onomatopoeic word for fondling a woman's breast, so Fudi Kuri, you know, that. And that basically symbolises what the whole series really is about. You know, sort of sexual frustration and sexual awakening and just sexual nature in general. You know, props to my friend Plastic Blue Kyle, who, you know, made me aware that that's what Fudi Kuri even meant. But yeah, that was the anime. The manga kind of deviates from the anime's story a little bit, and the ending is a lot more ambiguous than the anime. The anime, if you understand the meanings behind it, it's actually quite clear cut and has quite a conclusive ending. But the manga, the ending was quite ambiguous, and it became quite abstract towards the end. Where like I just kind of, it ended and it was like, oh right, that was the ending. I didn't even realise it was coming to that point. The art style is very different in comparison to the anime, which was kind of why it was very difficult for me to read, because the panel arrangement in this manga, that, you know, each page is like a work of art in itself. It's like a painting on a canvas. It's really hard to describe. Let me just kind of see if I can pull out a page, because there's negative spacing used outside of the panels, and it's really, really strange. Like you'll have panels that are really sort of abstract and, you know, really stylistic like this, and then you like towards the beginning. Let's see. you have like really strange panel arrangements like that where the panels are really small. But it's a very, very stylistic art style, which kind of complements the story well. But it can become quite messy and like, you know, you can feel quite bogged down, you know, by the really strange and bizarre art style, which is how I found, like, you know, that's why I dropped it the first time round. It's authored by Hajime Ueda. Obviously the story is by Gainax. I'm not sure if Hajime Ueda's done any other work. There's also like a little one shot in the back of this, which is all in like sort of like negative black and white, which is really, really bizarre. But overall, I did much prefer the anime over this, you know, the original source material. It was nice to have, you know, a manga adaptation, you know, published in English, but overall I would definitely say I recommend the anime and watching the anime first, doing a bit of research, and as I say, you know, you kind of need like quite an extensive knowledge of pop culture and, you know, anime sort of fandom in order to kind of appreciate it more. So yeah, tell me what you think of FLCL or Fooly Cooly. I keep calling it FLC because that's just what I'm used to saying. Yeah, I really love this anime. I'll definitely be watching it again. You know, it's easy to do that because it's so you know, it's such a quick and easy watch. You just watch it in a few hours. So yeah, that's my review of Fooly Cooly. Tell me what you think. Have you seen it, Fooly Cooly? If you read the manga, recommend anything that you think is similar to me. You know, I'm actually wanting to pick up Kill la Kill as and when that's released in the UK here. So yeah, that's really all I have to say on that really confusing, you know, subject. You know, it's kind of been difficult to do this review because, you know, what am I going to talk about when it's such a confusing anime? But, you know, tell me what you think this review, you know, how this review was, you know, how could have improved it. Tell me your thoughts, you know, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, don't forget to, you know, like the video, subscribe, share it around, and until then, you know, I'll see you around. ArchAngel, signing out.